I'm Matt.
Vinny.
I'm Christian.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Gary Oak.
And I'm Jake Tipton, and this is my informative speech for my online speech class. If you remember from my introduction speech, I actually did that on music, its influence on my life, so it shouldn't really come as a surprise. I'm going to do this one on Bob Dylan, a pretty important figure in music. He's a pretty prolific and famous songwriter. I'm sure most of you have at least heard of him. He's released 47 albums over his 49-year career. He's also quite socially important. He actually won a Pulitzer Prize in 2008 for a profound impact on popular music and American culture. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little chronological reading of his life and important milestones for you guys. Bob Dylan started to come to prominence in the 60s. As a young, aspiring singer-songwriter, he moved to New York to try to meet his idol, Woody Guthrie, who shares a lot of similarities with Dylan. He played around Greenwich Village, which was a pretty important cultural location, and eventually that came to a record deal, which was pretty important for him. Around that point, he legally changed his name from Robert Zimmerman to Bob Dylan because he thought it was more palatable, would give him a bigger audience. By the mid-1960s, he was fairly famous. He released a couple albums and was coming up in the political scene of reactionary singer-songwriters. It was actually in that scene in April 1965 that he first really came to prominence, something called the Electric Dylan controversy. He was at a folk festival, and at that point there really was almost entirely only folk singer-songwriters. They all used acoustic instruments, and Bob Dylan had really been experimenting and becoming more and more interested in expanding his craft at that time. He had a couple electric songs written, and he formed a pickup band at the concert, and played a couple electric songs there, and it actually, it sounds pretty normal now, but it caused quite a big controversy at that time. It really came out of nowhere, and it angered actually a lot of people. There was a pretty big backlash against it, and he received quite a lot of flack for it. After that, he actually went into hiding for a while. His performance was greeted with a lot of fury and a lot of anger from a really staid and stagnant scene that didn't appreciate it. So he retreated from the public eye just when he was starting to become, more important out there. It was kind of counterintuitive. But then, a couple years later, he came back with his really most accomplished album, Highway 61 Revisited. It started out with a song called Like a Rolling Stone. It's one of his most famous anthems, and it's really a kind of scathing attack on the people who had outed him from their circles where he just came up in. He was really still pretty angry about it, and it came across in his music, and it started him on the road to really the divisive artist that he is today. He started to get national attention at that point with Highway 61. He released a couple other quite acclaimed albums, Blood on the Tracks and Blonde on Blonde, both of which are pretty frequently cited as some of the most important albums in American culture. But then as he started to rise into more and more prominence, another really important event happened. He got in a motorcycle accident that threw out his back and put him completely out of action for a long time. Again, for the second time, he kind of retreated from the public eye, kind of shied away from the limelight for a while, and just like last time, it put him out of public mind and kind of put a hamper on his works. Although this time he was more established, so it didn't really completely distance him. He was out of it for quite a while, and when he finally came back in the late 70s, he was a reborn Christian, which came through quite strongly in his music. He released a string of 3 albums that were quite poorly received, and just completely turned him off the music system. He withdrew, again, more backlash against him from critics who had come to expect more, and went into a period that some people called his quiet years. He really didn't release many albums throughout the 80s and 90s, and what they were scattered and had really varying reviews, from critically acclaimed to completely panned. But his recent output, basically modern Dylan's work, has been on quite the upswing. He's released several well-received albums in the 2000s, and as his stock continues to rise, he's had a couple really important documentaries done on him. One called No Direction Home by the pretty famous filmmaker Martin Scorsese, and one fictional one called I'm Not There that actually won a couple Oscars. He's released several albums that have been really well appreciated, and just in 2009 released a Christmas album that was, while influenced by his faith, not overly divisive like his early works. It was really well received, and he's said since then he has more albums in the work. So you can definitely expect him to be on this continued upswing, I think. And on that note, I think you can definitely see that Bob Dylan, has had a pretty big influence on my life and popular culture in general, the American subconscious. His works and ideas helped me particularly through high school, which was a pretty formative time in my life. His political works and his more emotional songs. I think most people would agree, as he continues to put out music, America and myself are going to continue to listen and grow with it. I think that pretty much wraps it up.